Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Palestinian terrorists have struck again. They've killed an Israeli-American citizen in yet another deadly attack in the West Bank. So far this year, more than 20 Israelis have died in an ongoing wave of terror attacks.
Well, with the Muslim holy month of Ramadan approaching, officials fear more attacks are coming. Security experts are concerned that the escalating attacks could indicate a third intifada on the rise. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has more.
Palestinian terrorists shot and killed American citizen Ilan Ganeles on a main Israeli highway near the Palestinian Arab town of Jericho. The terrorists then shot at another car, set theirs on fire, and fled in another vehicle. After Monday's murders of two Israeli brothers, there's talk this recent violence could lead to a third intifada or uprising.
The general big picture is one of, I'd say, at least 3 months of continuous terror attacks by different Palestinian organizations and responses and countermeasures by Israeli security forces.
Former IDF spokesman Jonathan Conricus says this could lead to what he called a rolling escalation.
We're coming into the month of Ramadan, which historically speaking, even though it's a holy month for Muslims, historically speaking, it's a month of terror for Israelis.
Monday's attack sparked unprecedented Israeli retaliation that resulted in widespread condemnation.
I understand the hard feelings, but this isn't the way. We can't take the law into our own hands. Israel's government, the State of Israel, IDF, the security forces, they're the ones who need to crush our enemies.
U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price expressed U.S. concern about the weekend violence and Israeli rioting.
It is imperative that Israel and the Palestinians work together to de-escalate tensions and to restore calm.
Shai Golan, who heads a settlement council in biblical Judea and Samaria, also known as the West Bank, condemned the rioting and said it's not the way of settlement leaders.
To take the law into one's hands and burn things, this is not the way of Judaism, not the way of the Jews. There is a state, and only the state will manage these events.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, it's hard to imagine living in that kind of society, that kind of environment, where your enemy literally has celebrations whenever you're murdered. That is what the current situation is, and it's not current. It's been around for a long time. It's been around for decades. The idea that people would pass out sweets in celebration of murder is absolutely abhorrent, but that is what is happening today in Israel. In other news, President Biden's plan to forgive student debt for millions of Americans goes before the Supreme Court today. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Thanks, Gordon. The 43 million Americans who will be affected by the justice's decision are keeping a close eye on the court as it hears two related cases. Biden's plan is estimated to cost $400 billion over the next 3 decades. Critics say it's too expensive and doesn't address the underlying issue of the high cost of college. They also charge it's unfair to those who already paid off their loans or didn't take out loans at all. In the main case, 6 Republican-led states argue the program is illegal, claiming it amounts to federal spending without congressional consent. The second case involves 2 students who did not qualify for the plan. Well, the White House is stepping up challenges against China with a directive banning the TikTok app on all government phones. Federal agencies have 30 days to get TikTok off their government devices. The Office of Management and Budget said the ban is a, quote, critical step forward in addressing the risks presented by the app to sensitive government data, end quote. The move comes as Canada also issued a federal TikTok prohibition. Multiple bills have been filed in Congress looking to ban TikTok nationwide. The Republican chair and Democratic ranking member of the new House Select Committee on China recently addressed the issue.
TikTok is owned by ByteDance, a Chinese company that's required to provide its user data, including on the 140 million Americans, as well as control of algorithms to the Chinese Communist Party upon request. All we're saying is if TikTok is going to operate here, don't have that user data and algorithms controlled by an adversarial regime.
The committee holds its first hearing tonight in prime time and will focus on the Chinese Communist Party's threat to America. Well, a government oversight agency is criticizing the Biden administration's chaotic pullout from Afghanistan as a major reason for the Taliban's takeover. The Inspector General's office released a report Monday blaming the, quote, abrupt and uncoordinated withdrawal for contributing to the Afghan government's collapse. The report also cited a lack of accountability for weapons and military equipment as reasons for the Afghan military's breakup. More than $7 billion in U.S. military supplies was left to the Taliban. The report also laid blame on the administration's going back to George W. Bush for failures in planning and oversight, including the 2020 Doha Agreement by President Trump, pledging to pull out American troops from the country. Well, after the Taliban takeover, Afghans who helped the United States military faced death. One Marine veteran and former mixed martial arts champion risked his life to go back and save his Afghan interpreter. But he says God didn't want the mission to stop there. CBN's Mark Martin has this inspiring story.
When Marine veteran Chad Robichaud learned about the Biden administration's plan to pull the U.S. military out of Afghanistan, he thought it would be a disaster.
So a full withdrawal and a surrender of Bagram Air Force Base, I knew it would be catastrophic for national security, for global security, and stability in the region. And it's just not consistent with how we deal with post-war conversions as America.
Having served 8 deployments in Afghanistan, Robichaud tells CBN News his first thoughts centered on innocent people stuck in a country led by a brutal regime.
Additionally, my biggest concern was our allies, those who fought beside us for 20 years, being left behind. One being my friend Aziz, who did 15 years in special operations, 8 deployments with me, saved my life multiple times, and just my friend.
I was really worried about my children because my relatives, they turned their back at me. My friends, my parents, everyone, they're like, you're not coming to our house. This is your call. You did it. Now you handle it. And I cannot go to relatives. I cannot go to friends. And it was a total chaos. It was for me, it was like the end of the world.
14 years after Robichaud's final Middle East deployment, he organized a rescue mission to save Aziz, his wife, and 6 children. Once in Afghanistan, the situation on the ground led to change.
One of our team members noticed this group of 3,500 orphans and said, hey, let's not just get Aziz's family, let's get these orphans as well. And we kind of paused for a second. All of us are Christians. We all felt the burden that God put in our hearts to just help as many Americans, interpreters, their families, women, children, Christians that be persecuted. We just want to help as many people as we could.
The goal became a mission to save thousands from Taliban rule. Altogether, Robichaud and his coalition of heroes evacuated more than 17,000 people.
When the military was forced to leave after that Abbey Gate was blown up and 13 of our service members were killed, we chose to stay. Because we knew the White House was saying there was 100 Americans. We knew there were thousands of Americans, thousands of allies. We knew we still had the ability to help, so we did.
Robichaud shares his story in a new book titled Saving Aziz. He gives readers a behind-the-scenes look at what happened after the chaotic withdrawal of the U.S. military, describing the miraculous evacuation efforts during Afghanistan's historic humanitarian crisis.
The book's important to us, not to sell books, but it's important that the story gets out.
And the man whose name is in the title also sends his own personal message.
To please keep the Afghan poor people in your prayers, because I strongly believe in prayers. And even with this evacuation thing, I prayed in the name of Jesus and he answered. And, it all happened as a miracle for me.
He kept us safe. He gave us clearer thinking and opened doorways that were impossible for any man to open. And we were able to do this incredible thing and just be part of it. But ultimately, God orchestrated it, and all glory to him.
Mark Martin, CBN News.
Great story, Mark. Thank you. Well, in Turkey, CBN's Operation Blessing is carrying on its mission to bring relief to the victims of those tragic earthquakes with the support of people inspired to help those in need. At the OB warehouse, teams unloaded a truck with more than 1,500 boxes of food for people in the village of Hatay. Volunteers also packed bags full of hygiene items for distribution. Meanwhile, OB medical teams continue to treat people injured in the aftermath. A volunteer doctor described her treatment for an older gentleman who suffered a deep cut in his hand.
He was cooking some food. He cut himself with a knife, and we were able to clean the wound out and apply some medication to provide some pain relief and some numbing. And then we were able to suture or close the wound with some stitches. In order to prevent infection, we gave him some antibiotics to take, and he will be coming in every day for the next week for dressing changes and to make sure that the wound is healing and not getting an infection.
Operation Blessing meeting the practical, medical, and spiritual needs. Gordon?
Operation Blessing is on the ground, and we're committed to stay on the ground. Please pray for our Philippine disaster relief team. They're due to cycle in, but they're having trouble getting the visas they need and the permissions they need from the Turkish government. So pray that all the things, all the paperwork will get worked out. We need to cycle those disaster relief teams. We've learned over the years you've got to give even the relief workers some relief. But here's the underlying problem. The people that are affected by this disaster don't get that opportunity. They don't get to leave. So we need to be there for them. We need to provide the food, the medical care, the housing, all the things that they need. We're doing it in a few locations, but there's 300 miles of devastation. It's absolutely horrific. If you want to be a part of the relief effort, give us a call. 1-800-700-7000. Say, I want to give to the Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. You can write to us at CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. Just put Disaster Relief Fund in the memo line of a check. You can text to give. You can text the letters OBDR, that stands for Operation Blessing Disaster Relief, to that number, 71777, and you'll be directed to a giving page on your phone. Or you can just go to cbn.com. You can give there and designate your gift to disaster relief. Either way, do it now. Let's be a part of helping those wonderful people after this horrible series of earthquakes, and it's still going on. There's still aftershocks. We want to help them. You can be part of it. Call us, 1-800-700-7000.